What's that noise?
Me. Microphone. And hello everyone. Happy Friday. Yay. This is Coach Elex and this is Get a Grip with Coach Elex, your weekly radio show that is designed to inspire you to live your best life. So aren't you glad to be here with me and the one and only, my co-host, my better half, Stephen the Medium.
Well, welcome everybody.
And today, unlike last week, we don't have any shenanigans going on.
Nope.
You know, Steven is not trying to take over my show,
Yeah.
you know, and sabotaging my end.
Sure.
No, last week, for some reason, we just couldn't get it together. We're doing the show remotely, and when one signed on, the other one was kicked out, and then when the other one signed on, the other one was kicked out. Bottom line is I was quite discombobulated, and but ultimately we ended up having an amazing show with my guest, Dr. Henry Kahn, who has graciously agreed to return today. So aren't we lucky to have him back today? And the conversation is going to be part two of our conversation, work to become, not to acquire. And so I'll get back to that, you know, in a minute. But before I go into today's conversation, I want to check in with Mr. Stephen the Medium. First and foremost, how you doing? How you doing?
I'm doing really well. I'm doing very well, and I want to share a story that takes 2 seconds because you and I this morning went to a bakery because we have some amazing friends coming over tonight, and we stopped to this really cool bakery right around the corner from where we live, and we were looking to see what we were going to get, and I saw a cake, and underneath the description was a gin chocolate cake, and I thought, a gin chocolate? I've never heard of such a thing. Like, what? A gin chocolate? I'm like, Elix, maybe we should get that because it's so different. A gin chocolate cake. And then Elix like looks close at it and says, that says a 6-inch chocolate cake, not gin. The way it was...
Guys, seriously, this is living with Steven. This is what it looks like. This is not out of the ordinary. This is not a unique story. This is day in, day out. You know, and he said it so seriously, like, oh, a gin chocolate cake. What is that? And I'm looking at the sign like, Steven, that says 6 inches, not a gin chocolate cake. But God help me. But then again, I'm not going to say much because lately he has got a couple of stories on me and I don't want to, you know, be put on the spot. Just saying.
Well, on the spot, I can't. Last week, I shared this on my radio show Wednesday. I come downstairs one morning last week. You know, I'm up first up at like 6 a.m, and as soon as I open the bedroom door, I'm hit in the face with the Sahara Desert. I by the time I got to the downstairs to the slider to let the boys out, I lost 24 pounds. I was sweating so much. I'm like, what is going on here? And I look at the temperature downstairs. It's 83, and I always check weather. Like, I'm a weather fanatic, and when I was in the bathroom brushing my teeth, I checked the weather and it said, you know, it was 49 on the Cape. I'm like, how can it be 49 degrees outside and be 83 in the house? And I said, maybe the ladies downstairs, Alex's mom and aunt, were cold, or maybe they put the heat up downstairs and didn't realize they put it up so high. And so I get the boys out, and I decide to go downstairs, and I don't even have to because I get to the door to head downstairs, and I am melting because the fireplace is on. Mr. Cintron, before he went to bed the night before, instead of just shutting off the spotlight, decided that, you know what, just for something different, I'm going to also hit the switch to put the gas fireplace on and let it go all night. And that's what happened.
Well, I don't know what to say because I don't remember ever.
We could have died. We could have died with the gas.
But what I do know is, honestly, I'm the Puerto Rican. I'm the one that's supposed to be dramatic. I'm the one that's supposed to be like super soap opera like. In this case, Steven beat me to the punch because you are so dramatic. I mean, seriously.
Soap
The
opera.
Sahara Desert. But anyways, tell people what you're up to because I know you have a pretty big show, in-person show. We haven't had in-person shows for a long time because of COVID, but as the restrictions are lifted and we are welcome back live again as we knew it once before, you have an awesome show coming up. Tell
Yeah,
people
yeah,
about it.
I do. But before that, growing up, my mom used to call they weren't called the soap operas; they were called the stories. Just saying. As a kid, like if my mother wasn't a big like story person, but she watched General Hospital. But those were called stories. Like her girlfriends, her friends in the neighborhood. I got to get in. I got to watch my story. It wasn't a soap opera. Just saying. In Rhode Island, anyway. So I have a huge event coming up June 6th at the Sagamore Inn. It's my first in-person event in over a year. So it's a venue that they have outside. They have a tent. If you elect to, you can buy a light lunch, and it's going to start at 12, and it is going to be fabulous because the venue outside on the Cape is beautiful, and I'm going to not only do readings, but I'm also going to be handing out notes that your loved ones dictate to me, and I write down and I bring them to the reading because they know who's going to be a participant. So I cannot wait for this. So if you're interested, just go to my website, stephenthemedium.com/Sagamore, and I know there's tickets still available, and get your tickets before it sells out.
And it's going to be a fabulous event. And the Sagamore Inn is in Bourne, in the Cape. It's right over the bridge. So it's a beautiful setting. It's on a Sunday afternoon. So really, it's the weather. It's gorgeous here. You'll be right next to the canal. So there's no reason for you to say, hey, we're going to come see you guys and get to see us for a long time. Most people haven't seen us in a long time. So this is an opportunity to spend some time with us face to face. So how exciting is that?
And there's VIP tickets. I don't know how many left, but those are really great tickets too because we get to do a meet and greet and get a digital CD that I've done. So I really am looking forward to it.
Beautiful. That's awesome. And I wanted to let people know also, a lot of people keep asking me about my mom, and I want to let everyone know that she is doing so much better. She recovered from her cold. The antibiotics really did a good job at preventing any pneumonia. Her congestive heart failure, the medications are working wonderfully. And she's doing so well that we've decided to, book a trip to Puerto Rico to bring her back home so that she can spend some time there in her house. And Stephen and I can spend some time in the warm weather. So I'm really excited. My mother's sister is here with us, so the two of them are spending a lot of time together, and they're really enjoying being with each other. So it's really wonderful, and I often say that, listen, after every storm there's the sunshine. So you have to hold on tight. You have to really, no matter what happens, you have to always look for the good. Find something to be grateful about. And I tell you, through this process, I've held on to those words myself, and I'm really thankful, knowing, being here and seeing my mother recover, and knowing that now we can go to Puerto Rico and we don't have to worry about her health is really wonderful, right, Stephen?
That's the most important piece. And, everything happens the way it's supposed to. So clearly we were not supposed to go a little bit earlier, and now everybody's healthy. So we're good.
We are good.
Yeah.
So, today, before we bring our guest today, we're going to talk again. This is part 2 conversation. It's the continuation of last week's conversation. We call the show Work to Become, Not to Acquire. And that's a quote from Herbert Hubbard, who's a 19th century American writer, publisher, artist, and philosopher. And that, I was inspired by that quote because Dr. Khan is somebody who he's a physician, a medical doctor, and he transitioned later in life to become a, you know, a self-development coach, and he's going to talk a lot about his transition and what he's doing. But why that quote inspired me is because we are so many of us have gone through those stages in life. You know, when we're young, we want to climb up the ladder. We want to make a lot of money. We focus on, you know, working to acquire, whether it's acquire riches, whether it's to acquire, you know, physical things, you know, like a good car, a beautiful home, whatever that is. But as we you know grow older, you know, we many of us begin to shift what's important for us. And you know, and I think this is an important conversation because again, often we focus on doing what we got to do to make money, and then we sort of sacrifice what we love. We sacrifice our purpose. We sacrifice, you know, our heart. And I've learned, and I strongly believe that when you follow that, when you follow purpose, when you follow your heart, everything else comes effortlessly. And you can have it all. I'm not saying this conversation is not to say that money's not good. I love money. I love everything that it gets me, right? But what I'm saying is that when you focus on the purpose, when you focus on doing what it is that you love, everything comes effortlessly, including the money, and you get to have all of it. So if you find that you know you're sort of in a transition in life, if you find yourself you know having reached a plateau, if you find that you know you're one of those individuals that you know you've always known that there's something else you want to do, you've always wanted to do that one thing, but you know you've been held back because you're afraid, you don't, you know, you have all kinds of reasons and justifications why now is not the right time. And I always say that the right time is never going to come, by the way. So if you're waiting for the right time, you're always going to stay waiting because it never comes. And a person of power, you know, never waits for the decisive moment. A person of power is decisive in the moment. So this is it's a really awesome conversation. I'll tell you all about Dr. Khan when we come back. But Stephen, anything else you want to add before we go into the break?
No, just that, you know, when I do readings, exactly what you said, I get that all the time, that there's people that actually go, they're born and then they cross over and they're stopped by the fear and waiting for that right time and it never comes, and that's a regret.
Yeah. And when they come through, they tell us,
Yeah,
you know, that that's a regret. And they're telling us is they're giving us a nudge. Don't do what we did. So
exactly.
if you find yourself in a place like that in your career or in your life, this conversation is for you. So hold on. We're going to take a short break and we'll be right back. And if you want to call, you want to join the conversation, 508-222-1320. We'll be right back. And hello, everyone, and welcome back to Get a Grip with Coach Elix. This is your host, Coach Elix, and with me, I have my wonderful co-host, Steven the Medium.
Present.
Present. And today we're working to become, not to acquire. And, one of the things that I often think about is, when we think about true joy and true fulfillment in the work that we do, what does that mean? Well, that's the feeling that our work is contributing to something bigger than ourselves. And that for me, it's about purpose, it's about deepening purpose, it's about following purpose and having the courage to follow purpose. I often ask myself, and nudge my clients to think about two questions. What does your job or career help you become? And what do you want to become? And oftentimes, the answer to those two questions is very different. And today, we have an amazing guest. He was here with us last week, and he's been kind and generous enough to return so that we can have more time to talk. Our conversation last week was so fascinating. And Stephen and I were like, can we get Dr. Khan back with us? Dr. Khan, Henry Khan, is a board certified physician, lecturer, educator. He has been on the UCSF clinical faculty since 1980. He's also transitioned into being a personal development coach, focused on effective stress management and resiliency tools and techniques. And he's a friend and a peer as a fellow at the Institute of Coaching at McLean, an affiliate of Harvard Medical School. Hello, Dr. Khan, and welcome back. How are you?
Thank you. I'm great. It's nice to be able to connect with you and Stephen again.
We're so excited to have you back because we felt that time last week just I asked one question and before we know it we were done. And Stephen said to me, you know what, listening to Dr. Khan was so fascinating that I want to hear more. So we are so happy that you are back with us. So let me first, start with, I could not stop thinking about the story, what you share about your brother. And, we often talk, and I often talk in my show about defining moments, those blueprint moments in our lives that really become moments that define who we are as an individual, who we are professionally, and everything that happens in our life is often defined by those moments. And I can help to think that, the story that you share with us about your brother is one of those moments for you. So why don't let's go back for those of listeners who may not have listened to the show last week. Just sort of remind us again as to how that story. Or the question that I have for you, was that a defining moment, and was that a contributing defining moment that alter your decision to shift careers from being a certified physician to being a personal development coach?
Yeah, that's a great, interesting question. Something I've been thinking about pretty much most of my life. For those of you who didn't hear the story, I grew up in Southern California in a family with three brothers. I was the youngest of the three, and my father and my oldest brother were doctors, and I thought I was destined to also be a doctor. My brother Robbie, who was 2 years older than me, had severe Down syndrome. And it was really interesting growing up with Robbie because if you've ever met someone with Down syndrome, they can be very gentle, very kind. They laugh a lot. They play a lot. And they can be wonderful people. And growing up when I was a 4-year-old, where most of my memories come from, he was like the ideal brother. We never fought over toys. We never argued about anything. He was never hurtful. We never fought. it was amazing. And my job as a 4-year-old, actually, was my first coaching job, was to help him learn vocabulary so that he could communicate better. So we had a great relationship, and that was one of just defining moments that he was a wonderful person. And so when I got to we moved to a better school district so my older brother Brian could have a better chance of getting into med school. And I remember another defining moment, which was my mom used to tell me things like, you have to eat all the food on your plate because all the children are starving in Europe. This was a post-World War II baby boomer family. And I didn't know what that meant as a 4-year-old. I didn't know what starving was, but it sounded serious. And I knew what eating all the food on my plate meant. And that somehow I had this magical idea that if I somehow ate food on my plate, I was doing good for the world. I kind of missed that, but I was only 4. At any rate, one of the things that I do remember her saying was that one time she pulled me out on the back porch and said, "We do not act in anger or speak in anger in this family," and that was just something that was important for me to know. So when I was 6.5, I went to a new school system, and I was a new kid coming in halfway through the school year. This was first grade. And because of that, talking about how important food was, I remember the first day of school, I went into the cafeteria to have lunch. My mom had packed a nice lunch for me, and there was a food fight. And this was horrifying to me. My mom said it was bad. There were children starving and they were throwing food around. So I just left the cafeteria and went into the playground and finished my lunch. And after lunch, I remember coming into the classroom and I heard someone say, "And Henry." And the next thing I knew, I was in a major shaming moment where I was being accused of starting the food fight, which I hadn't done. If anything, it was the opposite reaction. And the teacher was so convinced that I was guilty that I became the one that they blamed. And it was very, very challenging as a 6.5-year-old. So that would become a theme throughout my life of, not somehow I didn't get to say it right. I didn't get to, I couldn't change the mind of the teacher, and I was falsely accused, and there was a lot of shame involved. So moving on to other defining moments, when I was 12, at this point my brother Robbie was going through puberty, and one day he shoved my mom. She didn't fall down. She reported it to the doctor, her doctor, and he went on total red alert, says, "Oh my God, we have to get him out of the house because he's bigger than you, Mrs. Kahn. He's bigger than Henry, and I can't guarantee either of you for safety if he stays in the house." And somehow my parents bought into that argument, and Robbie was put into a mental hospital. 3 or 4 months later, he went into heart failure. Literally had a broken heart. The valves disconnected themselves from inside the heart, and he turned blue and died. It was, and as a result, I had assumed I'd be a doctor just like my dad and my older brother, but I was so angry about doctors saying that and my parents going along with it, that I just I changed my mind, and for a while I didn't want to be a doctor. But then over time, as I thought about it, and of course at 17 they want you to declare what you're going to do with your life. I did decide, okay, I'll be a doctor, but only if I could be a good kind of doctor, not the kind of doctor that lets a 14-year-old die under their watch. So I didn't really know what a good doctor meant. I didn't really know what that extra thing was, but I worked hard and I was successful in my medical career. But it seemed like the thing that was valued most was knowledge and being able to quote research papers that helped people figure out what to do next when you had a patient that was difficult. But what I really found out over time was that there were times when I would shift into coaching. I didn't realize at the time, but that's what I was doing, and it was tapping into the patient's own internal resources, strengths, values, resilience, and that they would optimize their health outcomes and change their life in a positive way, often in very short interventions. So there was something going on with being a human being with those people that was beyond just having a little more knowledge or having read an extra few textbooks.
Yeah.
So,
And what you talk about, Henry, every time I have a conversation about significant moments in life, two things come to mind. Significant moments can be both very positive and they can also hold us back. They can be positive because they become drivers. So, you, as you said, you decided that you were going to become better than a doctor, but you were going to be better than any of those other doctors that you've encountered, in your childhood. But at the same time, significant moments hold us back because no matter what, it's not enough, and so they become anchors as well. When we come back, we're going to take a break. When we come back, I want to talk about self-doubt and roadblocks and how that conversation, that self-doubting or other roadblocks kept you from pivoting into the career of coaching. So we're going to take a short break, Henry, and when we come back, we'll continue the conversation with Dr. Henry Kahn, Work to Become, Not to Acquire. We'll be right back.
great, thanks.
And hello and welcome back to Get a Grip with Coach Elex. I'm your host, Coach Elex, and with me is my co-host, Mr. Stephen the Medium. And today we're talking about working to become, not to acquire. And my special guest is Dr. Henry Kahn. And Dr. Kahn just talked about defining moments and some of those defining moments for him. And for so many people, Dr. Kahn, they can relate to your story. First of all, you come from such a genuine place. Stephen and I were just talking, and Mark, our producer, we just listen and we want to keep listening. We don't even want to interrupt you because it's so, what you share is so profound and so interesting at so many levels. But, I do have a question. We talked about, self-doubt and roadblocks, and so many people relate to wanting to change, make a change in their careers, but they get stuck in fear. And that fear blocks them from having the courage to pursue, what that purpose, that vision for them. So for you, did you have any of those self-doubting moments? Do you have any roadblocks that have gotten in the way of pursuing what you now know is a career as a self-development coach?
Yeah, great question. For those years between when I was 12 and experienced what happened with Robbie and changed my mind, didn't want to be a doctor, I had other interests, so I explored those in my own way. One was I was interested in electronics at the time, and I made myself an oscilloscope and almost electrocuted myself. The current went from my fingers holding a wire to my forearm on the same side, touching a grounded ham radio transmitter, and that shock from 6 inches from my hand to my forearm sent me across the room.
I think that was a sign from above that,
Yes.
from a higher power saying that is not the one for you.
Indeed. And then I had a Gilbert chemistry set, I guess before liability laws were fully in effect, and they had a chemical in it that produced oxygen when heated. And it was kind of cool. You blow out a match and stick it in the little test tube, and it would come back on, flame up. And I figured out how to make that into rocket fuel, which it turns out it actually is part of solid rocket fuel. And the only good news was that the company didn't let you reorder that 1 ounce bottle of that chemical, but I could have burned down the house with it. And then I also had the unwarranted bravado of swimming on a very rough day in Southern California near Santa Monica Beach, where I went into the water and the waves were way too big, and anybody with any self-preservation sense would have stayed out of the water, but I was sure I could beat it and almost drowned. And so I was exploring some of my other interests, and that's kind of what led me back until maybe I will be a doctor if I could only be the best kind, whatever that meant. So fast forwarding through my career, I did well in med school and internship in my internal medicine residency, and was invited to come back for an extra year as a chief medical resident. And I immediately went into a imposter syndrome situation where the best chief residents during my training were all people you'd admit a complex patient, and the next morning the chief residents would come up with an article on the very complex patient. They'd hand it to the team and everybody would be happy. Nobody on the team had time to read the articles, but it felt so good getting an article. And so I thought that was what the best doctors did, best chief residents. But what I was turned out to be in my chief residency was someone who was a human being. And I was connecting with people on a different level, not just being smarter level, but it was a human connection. and I attribute a lot of what I got from living with my brother with Down syndrome. That there was intuition and strengths and capabilities, and I started getting trained by my patients. I still remember one of the first patients I had that made me start thinking about this role of being a coach was a woman with breast cancer who just was upbeat and positive, and she'd tell me, I know this is going to sound strange, Dr. Kahn, but the cancer is the best thing that happened to me in my life. And I said, well, how is that? She said, well, every day I wake up and I'm joyful that I made it another day. And I'm always open to the oncologists coming up with a new treatment plan if the other one didn't work. And every day I felt was a gift. I'm listening to this woman, and I was going through my feeling like an imposter and having struggles with that, and feeling like I was not up to the standards that I had seen. And yet here were these patients started telling me these stories about how strong and resilient they were. And that started changing me, and I found that I could, on an intuitive level, help people through really major crises that they were going through, simply by coaching them. And instead of telling them what to do, people come into the doctor's office. They want the doctor to tell them what to do. So I write out the prescriptions. I tell them what steps to take. We come up with a plan, maybe get referrals, order some tests. That's the doctoring. But beyond the doctoring was the coaching. And I did it intuitively until one day I got challenged by it. One day when I was director of student health at UC San Francisco, we had a student come in who was crying in the waiting room, waiting for the psychiatrist to see her. And the staff asked if I could see her for the next 5 minutes just to calm her down and help her through whatever she was going through. And she ended up being, the story was that it was the second anniversary of her mom dying, and she had been a caregiver for her mom while she was also a full-time student. And what had happened was that she blamed herself for her mom's death. And this was the second anniversary that she was there waiting to see the psychiatrist. So I just asked for a little more information. Tell me what's been going on with you. And she said, well, I asked, how long were you taking care of your mom? 6 years. Okay. And what was her problem? Metastatic cancer. Okay. And what were you doing to support her? Well, I took her to every chemotherapy visit, every radiation therapy visit. I also pushed the doctors who were taking care of her. If one round of chemo didn't work, what was the next round and the next round? And when we used up all the different rounds that were known, I would push them to say, well, is there an experimental trial going on that we could enter? And they did a few of those, and then eventually it got to the point where the doctors were saying, we have no more treatments to offer. And she felt like she needed to push harder. So that's why she was so distraught that night. She went in, and I had asked her, are you having any suicidal thoughts? And she said, well, I'd never do that, but, if I was walking down the street and a safe fell out of the apartment up above me, and it hit me, it wouldn't be the worst thing. Mm. So kind of maybe thinking about it, but not really. And she told a different version to the psychiatrist a little later. Well, if I got hit, if I got involved in a head-on collision, it wouldn't be the worst thing, but not enough to put her in a hospital. And anyway,
what did you do to make a difference for her?
Right. Well, so what I did was, there was an empty chair. I had only a few minutes. I said, first of all, just from the primary care doctor saying this, in my own experience of a full career, I have never seen a caregiver from the family who also was a full-time student spend 6 years taking care of their family member. And I was just wondering, this idea came in. You see this empty chair next to you. If with your permission, I want you to imagine your mom is sitting in that chair. What would she say to you? And out of her voice came, this patient's voice came, this, it was like she had heard it many times before. Oh, honey, you were the most amazing caregiver I've ever seen. You took care of me for 6 years. No one that I know of had that kind of devotion from someone who is also a full-time teacher and I'm a full-time student. And you're kind and giving, and I cannot imagine you doing anything more than what you already did for me. You already are, and I know you want to go into palliative care medicine, and you already are there. You are already a healer, and I can't imagine anything more amazing than what you did for me. I love you. I always will, and that's what this person said. And then the psychiatrist knocked on the door, and off she went. 4 months later, so that was that evening. The psychiatrist didn't think she was bad enough to go in the hospital. 4 months later, I was in a small teaching group as a facilitator, and there were 4 students in the room, and she was one of them. And she stood up and said, "Before we get going, I wanted to say something to acknowledge Dr. Khan." And she said, "Remember that night, Dr. Khan, when I came in, second anniversary of my mom's death?" "Yes, I do." Well, actually, the truth is that night I was going to commit suicide. My plan was to calm down enough so I could carry it out. And when you came up with this idea of having my mom appear in my imagination, and I heard what I was saying that she seemed to be channeling to me, I just changed my mind. And so I just want to let you know that. But I found out that, and I described that to one of the psychiatrists in student health. He said, "You cannot counsel patients."
Yeah.
I pushed back a little bit. I pushed back a little bit and said, "Well, which part of my saving the life of your former patient do you have a problem with?" And she admitted, "Okay, I admit you're good, but you shouldn't call it counseling." I said, "Okay, well," and she was the first one who said coaching. And I had an aha moment because I had a whole bunch of other patients who were like this, who had a transformation very quickly. And it was me listening and finding out what they wanted, and then encouraging them to go down their own pathway. So,
what inspiring? Sorry, Dr. I want to hear more about it, but we do have to break. So hold on. We'll take a short break, and we'll be right back.
thanks.
And hello, everyone, and welcome back to Get a Grip with Coach Elix. This is Coach Elix, your host, with me, my better half and co-host, Stephen the Medium. And we are talking to Dr. Henry Kahn about working to become, not to acquire. Working to, oh my God, I even forgot. I'm so in tune with the conversation that I'm sort of even forgot the title of my show, but of today's show. But one of the things, though, that I want to say is recently, I think a couple of weeks ago, I did read an article about it was the final shareholder letter from Jeff Bezos as the Amazon CEO. And there's a quote from him there, and I can't help as I'm listening to you, Dr. Kahn, to really think of this. He actually says, if you want to be successful in business, and then in life, actually, you have to create more than you consume. In listening to your story, that's a really perfect demonstration of somebody who's really dedicated a life to creating rather than consuming. And Stephen, my co-host, he's a medium, so he speaks, to that people. And as I'm listening to your last story, I couldn't really help but think about how similar his work is to what you just described. And when you talk about having that imposter syndrome, that self-doubt about what you do, I wanted to ask Stephen, what advice would you give Dr. Kahn about who he is as both a physician and a coach?
Well, hello, Dr. Kahn. There are a lot of similarities, and coming from an 8-year-old boy like myself who had his dad commit suicide, I've had that syndrome my entire life. And actually, it sort of was propelled me to go to law school, to become an attorney, to start my own practice. But their self-doubt was there every second, and I still sometimes deal with that. And when I realized that I could communicate and hear loved ones and people that have crossed over, it completely changed my perspective. And I realized through spirit, so like that example that you gave, Dr. Kahn, which was amazing, and asking that woman to speak to her mom, that's been my experience of I think I've learned the most in the last 7 years than I have in the rest of my life, just from spirit. And just if when you have those stories in your head about the self-doubt, and from an 8-year-old boy, it was almost like moving cement blocks for me to remove this from my brain, because that's all I knew is that, my dad, he took his life. How could he take his life if I was a good son, and all of that sort of continued for many, many years. But then connecting to spirit and hearing, there's just, I could go on and on, but the advice would just be, is from what I've received from spirit, is that we have one life here. This is a learning school here on earth. And if we don't get out of our way, if we don't get out of our boxes that we put on, our limitations that we put around us, then we can never find our full purpose, get on our path. And clearly, Dr. Kahn, you've done that, which is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for saying that. If I can say one more quick connection to talking to spirit, would that be okay?
Of course. We have about 2 minutes, but go ahead. Make sure you share that with us.
All right. So, as part of one of the things I did in my coach training was to try to master my storytelling and telling of my defining moments, and it's still a work in progress. I know the stories, they just take a little too long, but this one was, I was going through a transition at my workplace, and it was a really stressful time, and I had a leadership development coach at the time who also understood neurolinguistic programming. And she asked me if I'd like to go through an exercise. which I did, and it was about, at first she said, stand up, close your eyes, tell me where the tension is. I said, solar plexus. She said, okay, now I want you to imagine you could reach in with both hands into your solar plexus and pull out something, whatever it is that's causing this. So I went through the motions, and she said, okay, look at your hands now and tell me what you see. And I said, wow, this is really interesting. I see two hearts. One's beating, one's not. Do you have any idea what that means? I said, well, maybe it's about my brother Robbie, but I'm not sure. So fast forward to a number of years later, I was working on the idea of writing, going after my signature story being the most difficult one. I was challenged, what story do you not want to tell? Tell that story. So I was thinking about Robbie, and I wrote down all of his characteristics as we were growing up and all that I knew about him from life. And I said, I'm looking at this list, and wow, it's like Robbie was an enlightened being. And a voice in my head says, took you long enough. This was about 55, 60 years after Robbie died. A long time.
Yeah, I love that.
And he said, and I said, Robbie? He says, yeah, you thought you were there to take care of me. Actually, I was there to take care of you.
Oh, wow.
And so,
ain't that the truth?
Let me go through. So do you remember that NLP exercise? I said, sure. He said, you got it half right. It was coming from me. The part you didn't get right, though, was the message, and that was, I have been and always will be with you, dead or alive.
Wow.
Wow, that's so beautiful.
So you felt guilty because you didn't come see me in the mental hospital the week before I died. That's okay. I never went away. And you didn't get to go to the funeral. Okay, that was also okay. I didn't need to say goodbye because I was still there. So I've got you. And then he went through the near drowning thing where there was a voice in my head that told me not to be in panic and to guide me to get through those waves. And there was another time when, he just was there. And when my older brother Brian died when he was, from metastatic cancer, Robbie was there with me to kind of help me through that as well. So,
wow, that's amazing, Dr. Kahn. The fact that you're fortunate.
Yeah, and he clearly is a guardian angel for you.
Sure.
Listen, we've come to the end of our show, but I want to remind our listeners, where can they connect with you? Because, seriously, I'm sure people want to hear more of who you are, and there's plenty of people who would want to connect with you. Where can they connect with you?
Well, I'll give you my email address, and I actually have someone working on building me a website. I've actually contracted with a person, so there's really a place to go eventually, but it's not there yet. But my email is Henry, Henry, initial J, like John, and K is in King, A is in Alex, H is in Henry, N as in Nancy, Henry J. Kahn with no periods or spaces at iCloud.com.
And you also have a presence on LinkedIn, correct?
Yes, I'm also on LinkedIn, and a profile is there to get more information about me. So either way would be fine. And nice thing about LinkedIn is it usually tells me if somebody's interested. So I'd be happy to chat with anybody. Not all of my stories are about suicidal people. A number of my stories are also about career-saving situations and challenges, and so there's. I like to be helpful.
And you've demonstrated that in today's conversation. Dr. Kahn, thank you so much for your time, for your generosity, for your attention. We're so excited to have you. We hope you join us back at some point again. You and I will continue to connect at our IOC fellow meetings every week, and I look forward to seeing you or talking to you next week. Have a great rest of your weekend, and thank you again for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you so much to both you and Stephen. I appreciate it.
You are very welcome. You're very welcome. And with that, we've come to the end of the show. We have a few minutes, maybe just a minute. But Stephen, remind people again where they can find you and what's going on with you.
You can find me, Stephen the Medium, on all social media, and go to stephenthemedium.com/Sagamore to purchase tickets to see me live June 6th, a Sunday at Sagamore Inn down the Cape. It's going to be phenomenal.
It is going to be phenomenal, and you get to see me too. I'm the sidekick. Not the sidekick, but the sidekick. And you can find me at Coach Helix. Coach Helix anything. And if you're not connected with me, you should be connected with me. Listen, everyone, have a wonderful weekend. Enjoy these magnificent and glorious days. And I look forward to connecting with every single one of you next week. Get a grip with Coach Helix. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.